right. Are we on?
Hi, we are.
All right, good.
Hi,
Hi, Jen.
how are you?
I'm doing well. Doing well. How about you?
Great,
Good, good.
great.
It's good to see you. Good to be here again for another Just the Tips with Jenn and Eric. Today we're going to be talking about cyber.
Yeah,
Talking about cyber, the big marketing word, the big buzzword.
yes, it's a buzzword and it means just about anything you want it to mean, seems like.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, in the insurance world, it seems like it's all over the place. You
yeah.
see it on small policies as add-ins, you see it included in coverage, and then there's these standalone policies that are super expensive. How would an average insured, a policyholder, the average consumer, ever know the difference in what they're getting from one thing to the next?
Well, they call us.
Oh,
Oh, shameless plug. But you're right. I mean, how would the average consumer know? Because if the option is I'm going to pay $65 to add something on to my business owner's policy, or I'm going to spend $6,000 on a standalone policy, which, by the way, isn't really out of the realm of possibilities.
it's a
Even
no-brainer.
right,
It's a
right.
no-brainer. I'm going to pay $65 for cyber coverage,
Right,
right?
but what are you getting, right? What do you get? So the truth is there really isn't a lot of standardization in the insurance market right now around cyber, or at least the use of the terms. So I like to say something like cyber liability and data breach. So identify your stuff, my stuff, right? What did my stuff do to your stuff? Or what did I do that did something to your stuff? That's liability stuff, third party liability.
Right.
And then my stuff, right? What do I have that I'm afraid of losing? And those things could be tangible items like computers, um, microphones, uh, printers. They can be, anything that is accessible through tech, right? Through a connection on a server, or any of those things. So my physical things, and then there's other things that belong to me that I don't want to lose. Might be my business income. If I'm shut down because somebody attacked my stuff, I want to be able to stay afloat, keep up with things, right? What are the other things that people can take that belong to me that I want back? My money. Somebody steals my money. Somebody steals my time. Somebody steals my
So, in
phone
what way, though?
line.
Because we're talking about, the potential for somebody to steal your money
Yeah,
can happen in a lot of different ways. So,
sure
what's
can.
a cyber-related way that happens?
Yeah. So one is social engineering. And we have a whole other session that's dedicated to these kind of phishing, these scam emails that come
Right.
through. But the latest, and they're actually getting really, really good at this. So they send an invoice that looks like something that you otherwise would have paid, either by them having hacked into your system to see what you've paid before, or they've hacked into one of your clients' systems or subs systems, right? And sent you an invoice that looks like something you owe. We had a client who had that happen twice.
Yeah.
And, I saw an email the other day, even from one of our vendors that said, hey, our banking information changed. Here's our new routing info for the next time you make a payment. And, if you don't get on the horn and call to make sure that those are legit, you could have a real problem on your hands. So
Yeah.
that's one way that they steal your money.
And so the point being, though, for the purpose of this discussion, is really that I think to go where you were already headed, not all cyber coverage is created equal.
No, social engineering is the kind of coverage that isn't on even what you would think would be a more robust
Right.
policy,
Right.
something that includes the your stuff, my stuff kind of thing. Doesn't always include coverage like social engineering, and it's so important for so many firms to have. So the list of things that you could have on an insurance policy rather, for cyber liability, data breach. This is our stuff that we're talking about, the business's stuff. So that's really the data breach portion of it is very complex, and it's dependent upon what you need and what you have and what you don't want taken. Another thing is bricking, right? So a hacker gets in and they make your stuff useless. It's a brick. It's no longer useful. So you want coverage for the replacement of those things, your computer systems, your
Not
servers.
every type of cyber policy is going to include that. type of
No,
coverage.
no. So when we're talking about data breach coverages, those little endorsements that you have on like your package policy or your business owner's policy, usually are limited to things like notification for a hacker getting in and accessing personally identifiable information. It's not much, doesn't give you much.
And so when you're talking about first party coverage, we're talking about
The me stuff.
those little add-ons to existing policies really only benefiting the policyholder in most cases. So those the costs associated with having to deal with a breach event that the policyholder would have to deal with, that the company would have to deal with, right?
Sure.
Is what those little add-ons are really intended to cover to a relatively low level.
Sure. So those are those first party coverages, taking my stuff. And then there's that third party coverage, the liability that exists because you did something to someone else. So that's hacker gets in, sets up a virus, you get a virus in your system, it's transferred to another company and they have a breach or they have a loss because of what you did. Um, you know, really most people as usual are very concerned with their stuff, that first party coverage, but it can be very expensive. Ransomware is really big right now. You can open up a ransomware virus, shut everything down in your system, have to pay someone else, have to pay a hacker to release your information.
Yeah.
Your limits might not be very high. Even if you did purchase an add-on to a business owner's policy, may not include the cost to pay for ransomware. So even if you're getting a little bit of first-party coverage, premium is going to be such an indicator of what kind of actual coverage you get.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to break it down even further and put it into the most basic terms,
Yeah.
when we're talking about a business owner's policy. So most design firms are going to have a business owner's policy, some type of general liability and property coverage together in one. Sometimes it could be separate, but those little add-on coverages really are going to be just your first party, my expenses, my stuff kind of coverage. And then when you have add-ons for things like cyber and tech on a liability policy, like your professional liability sometimes has, some limited cyber coverage. Now you're addressing that third party
Correct.
exposure to it. So when you're breached, your business is breached by a hacker and it creates costs and expenses for somebody else.
Yes.
Now we're talking about third party coverage, liability coverage. And usually these policies are really only going to have one or the other as an add-on.
Yeah, those little endorsements of some carriers have gotten pretty good at combining them or having separate, but if your
Still
agent
really limited though.
Yeah, very limited. And if your agent or broker doesn't understand what it is that they're adding, you may not really understand exactly what you do or don't have, right? So there are definite limitations. I wouldn't rely upon those kinds of add-ons if you have true exposures. So talking to a knowledgeable broker is definitely the best way to do it. But even if you have all the insurance in the world, right? Even if you have all the insurance in the world, prevention is better than any medicine, of course. So even if you have the kind of coverage that's going to give you back your stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like I steal your banana and you say, hey, I want my banana back. And I say, I'll give you your banana back, but you got to give me some money for it, right? I want like $5 for that banana. You love
it. Worth more than that.
You love your banana. But I say, I'll give you your banana back. Give me $5. You give me $5. I smush up your banana and I hand it back to you. Still your banana, but now it's all smushed up and you got to find a way to put it together, right? It's never going to be the same banana, but you got it back.
This is a sad story.
It's a sad story.
And we have seen that and how policies respond differently to the restoration of those things and the term.
To the banana?
You can restore that banana, but it's going to take a lot of work to get it back to its original order.
Yes. Yeah. So you might get that banana back. You might get all of it back, right? But it's never going to be the same. Or, the other example I like to use is the puzzle. You've got this giant puzzle and it's got like 1 million pieces and you want your puzzle back because it took you a long time and a lot of pieces to put together. And so, all right, I'll pay you to give me back my puzzle, but you take a piece of my puzzle or a few pieces of my puzzle. I don't even know it's gone because this puzzle is so big and I've got to put it all back together. I don't even figure this out for years, right? This is what we see a lot of times when we're talking about ransomware. they'll pay the hacker. I know it's a whole other thing. They'll pay the hacker to give you back your data, but you get your data back and it's not everything you lost, or
Well,
you
the
don't even
reputable
realize.
hackers are the ones that will give it back to you in usable format, and that's
Oh,
something that's a true thing that
yeah.
actually exists. Is that the insurance companies, the adjusters, the people that work on this every single day know the difference between a reputable hacker
Isn't that
and a
something?
non-reputable, and,
Yeah.
it's incredible to me because they'll be willing to pay a ransom to a more reputable hacker knowing that they're going to get the information back.
For sure. So they'll get the information back, but even reputable hackers don't always put things back the way that they found them, right?
Right.
And so you might not even realize for years that some of the data you needed isn't accessible because you
Right.
didn't need it then. So there are so many what we call soft costs related to these kinds of losses. And the best way to handle these are prevention. So a different different tips that we'll do in another time, but um,
Prevention.
prevention is key.
It's key.
So,
Super
so
important.
the idea behind today's just the tips is just to talk about the different ways cyber is used for marketing and to not be confused or be fooled, I guess, into believing that somebody offering you something for $90 is going to be anywhere close to a policy that could cost, 6,000, 7,000, depending
Right,
on
kind of
your.
a buyer beware
Yeah.
type situation.
Yeah.
We're the consumer reports of the insurance world here, um, and it's true. I mean, when it comes to insurance, sometimes, and you're probably not going to hear a lot of brokers say this, but sometimes you get what you pay for when it comes to coverage. Um, and if something is a throw-in, or if it's a very inexpensive add-on, probably is not as robust as what you may think it is or what you may need it to be. And some companies really don't have that much exposure. Design firms, I will say, um, you know, they don't have the same type of exposure that you see in a lot of those throw-in coverage parts. So when you're talking about things like notification costs and response costs and all that type of thing that may be relevant to a business that has a lot of personally identifiable information on hand all the time, like a
Health
doctor's
industry,
office, right?
right? Retail.
We
Yeah,
saw that
for
with
sure.
Target, and they had
Hmm.
very specific information that a hacker could use and resell on the black market and everything. Um, Design firms don't have that same type of exposure. So you see these cheap data breach, add-on coverages that they're going to call cyber coverage, but you're never going to use it as a design firm because you don't have that kind of exposure. And the things that you are very heavily exposed to as a design firm are very different and are not covered under most throw-in or add-on programs.
Right. And I think the exposure that exists for almost every business, especially any business that uses email, and that's what
Right.
99% of businesses, uh, the biggest exposure are the folks in your office, are
Right.
the folks who are using that email. It used to be very easy to identify those spam emails, and it's not as easy as it used to be. So a little bit of prevention, a little bit of training, a little bit of understanding, a conversation with someone who knows a little bit about coverage to
Definitely
help
you.
you, yeah, to help you along is the best way you can be. So buyer beware, like
Right.
Eric said before. Uh, you get what you pay for sometimes.
Yeah, and I think we give this disclaimer with a lot of the things that we talk about because there's a lot of people out there that try to drum up these scare tactics to get firms to buy certain things and add coverage and that you know it's cyber is one that maybe 10 years ago you were saying, yeah, I mean something could happen, and if it does, you probably be happy that you bought that cyber policy for the $500-600 that it cost at the time to add
Yeah.
it on, knowing full well that there was exposure, but not a ton. And again, to your point, I think that's a good one. Is when it comes to insurance, a lot of times you can get a good sense for what your exposure actually is by how much that policy costs. And so, $500-600, pretty safe bet that you don't have a ton of exposure to that thing. Doesn't mean it's zero, but not a whole lot. But those days are over, and the threat is real. The exposure is real. Design firms are really considering this coverage now more than ever, not just because of all the things that are on the news daily about cyber attacks and hackers and whatever threat there is out there in the world, but because their clients are requiring it now.
Oh, absolutely.
And even 3, 4 years ago, that wasn't happening the way it is today. And so once that becomes a contractual obligation, now we're talking about very specific requirements. You have a little bit less flexibility as the buyer to say, well, these are what my exposures are, and these are the things that I think are important to me to have covered. And now you're making those buying decisions based on what the contract is. Most insurance policies end up being, right, is because a client asked me for it and I have to fulfill this contractual requirement,
What?
blah, blah, blah. But that's what it's becoming.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's a completely different animal. It's the exposures are different. They're changing all the time. It's like nothing we've ever seen in the insurance market in terms of how quickly these things are changing constantly, and how insurance companies are really struggling to keep up with it. So it's a real cat and mouse game, that, for an industry that always seems to be kind of behind all of that exposure. They're very reactionary. It's been difficult for them to keep up, and so there's things that we do to make sure that our clients are taken care of in terms of having the most up-to-date coverage and the most up-to-date policies that are going to respond to you know the ever-changing threats,
Absolutely.
so to speak.
All
So,
right.
how'd we do?
I think we did pretty well.
This was a good just the
It
tips,
was
I
it was
thought.
just it was a pretty good just the tips. All right.
All
See
right.
you
Well,
next time.
yeah, as always, if you have any questions or want to talk about this in more detail, we are always available and happy to talk to you. So give us a call.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jen.